Thanks for joining the Tomorrow Cities Community of Practice meeting. Nice to see everyone. Maybe we'll hang on a minute or so to see who else is going to join us. Thank you all. Thank you. Great to see everyone joining. That's terrific. Much appreciated. So this is our first session on the Tomorrow Cities Community of Practice. Let me share my screen and we'll jump straight in and people can join us as we go along. One important thing is this meeting's being recorded, and the plan is for the video to go on to YouTube so that everyone can access it. So I hope that's okay with people. Okay, so let's get started. Thanks for joining. My name is Max Hope from Leeds Beckett University in the north of England in the UK on a cold mid-December day. And I'm very pleased to be the interim chair for the Tomorrow Cities Community of Practice. And the idea is that the chair of the Community of Practice is a revolving one, and we hope that people, particularly from city teams and beyond, may want to take on this role and shape the Community of Practice in ways that are valuable and useful to them. So that's very much the spirit in which the Community of Practice, we hope, will work. So we have rather a packed agenda. The key message.
I just pause you for a second. I think there's a query in the chat about whether the recording has started. I'd hate for you to get into full steam without the recording being on.
I think, is it being recorded, Vivek? I think it automatically started.
Yes. It's I can see it recording. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Mark.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. So we have a busy agenda. I guess the key emphasis is on the question of what next. So we've had a terrific project for the last 5 years, reaching the end of the funded stage. What are we going to do with all the momentum and energy that's been developed over the past 5 years? What can we do to support trying to create and maintain this energy going forward? So that's really the purpose of today's meeting, and ultimately the purpose of the Community of Practice, to support that process of moving the Tomorrow Cities work into the future. So to get us started, I'm going to hand over to you, Mark, please.
Yeah, thank you. If I could have the next slide then, please. Yep. Thank you. Those of you that are familiar with Tomorrow's Cities, it's great to see you and colleagues that have been with us. I can see in some of the early days, but not more recently. Fantastic to see you and some new faces as well. So, as Max said, this is very much now an open forum, and we're transitioning from a research-funded project where there was a very specific mission of delivery into an open community of practice where the aim is much more to support each other's work, whether that's research or policy, but around a specific mission, which I think is still the same, and it's shown on this slide, which is to reduce disaster risk for the poor or marginalized in tomorrow's cities. So we're interested in breaking cycles of risk creation, not so much responsive mode risk management. And we have a bias towards the interests of the marginalized and the poor. And we feel that based on the work of the last 5 years, there's a fantastic opportunity to do that in cities that are expanding rapidly. So if I could have the next slide. Thanks. So this slide is just a description of that point of departure. And you can see from the graphics the number of partners and the amount of work that's been done. But just let me talk you through some of the common threads that hold us together to this point, and may offer us a starting point for discussions, for exchanges, for research and policy innovation going forwards. But of course, the fine tuning of that is to be defined by the membership of this group over the coming months and years. But here's where we've got to at this point. We're motivated by recognizing 3 elements of a common challenge. First, that the world faces rapid urban growth, and particularly Asia and sub-Saharan Africa are really the global focal points for that rapid urban growth. Alongside that, of course, we have climate change, but also the urbanization of the landscape itself generates additional hazard exposure, whether that's cities expanding, perhaps along the coast or uphill slopes, or the concretization of the landscape, increasing heat or rapid flow of water. So there's an increased hazard exposure, rapid urban growth, and of course, we all recognize there are new policy demands coming in part from some of the UNFCCC Sendai framework mechanisms for risk reduction, but in any case, an increasing awareness of urban populations about the risks that they face and a desire for living in a resilient and inclusive future. So those are the challenges. The lessons that we've learned collectively land on these 3 points, which are the sort of motivation for the discussion. First of all, that we feel there's an opportunity for a future-oriented lens. So action today that will set in place a safer tomorrow. This isn't pushing the hard decisions into the future, but knowing that we have a responsibility to act today to secure the future that we want. A commitment to inclusivity, and a lot of the methodologies, and many of you have helped to shape those, so you know, are built around enhancing local voice, but voice in conversation with policymakers and business interests as well. So truly inclusive. And finally, the importance of science and evidence. Really having an orientation to the future or including local voice is going to be limited, possibly even counterproductive, unless science and evidence are right at the core of that mission. Finally, then, in this community of practice, it might be that we continue these conversations to share lessons across the 10 cities, and you can see them listed on the right-hand side of this slide, the 10 cities that have been part of Tomorrow's Cities so far, and we hope others will join, motivating and supporting our own work in those cities, and building some strength through collaboration. So the sense that we're not alone working in our cities, and that there's much that can be done to support change, whether you're a policymaker, an academic, or indeed a community level actor. So I could have, I think there's one more slide, perhaps, Max. Oh no, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. That's great. Yes, and as Mark suggested, and as the agenda suggests, this terrific amount of momentum has been built, terrific amount of work over the last 5 years has been built. And our key question as we push forward is what next? And that's really, as this agenda suggests, is the focus of today's session and also future community of practice meetings. And as we work through this agenda, and we'll come back to it as we go along, we'll build in opportunities for questions and discussion as we go ahead. So by way of my introduction, I've found it really interesting over the last months as we've worked with and grappled with the concept of a community of practice. And it's been really interesting to find out what one is, and probably just as importantly, what one isn't. And this figure is a useful one for me because it maps out where a community of practice sits in relation to other forms of organization and interaction. So we have formal projects and working groups in the middle there. And while Tomorrow Cities was a funded project with contracts and roles and management structure and so on, it sat somewhere in there, I'm sure. But now in the community of practice phase, we move towards the top of the figure. And I kind of take two takeaways from this. Firstly, around the purpose of this group, the question seems to be an important one. What is the common interest that will hold our community of practice together? And Mark's already outlined it for me. It's the shared science, knowledge and practice and expertise and ethos and values we've built together over the last 5 years. And this is the thing we have in common, and our ongoing commitment to that and to grow it and adapt it and so on will be what holds the community of practice together. And my second takeaway from the figure is really the same point as the first. That's all that's holding the community of practice together is our commitment to it. So it may well be that we'll run out of steam at some point as life overtakes us and other challenges and jobs and roles and so on. But I'm optimistic that with the great momentum we've built already, with interesting and useful meetings and discussions, social media, that spins out perhaps into new projects and opportunities, we can push the Tomorrow Cities and related work out into the future. So I guess the overall message from today is that we really hope you join in with this. Become chair of the community of practice, organise and lead sessions, join the steering group, shape the direction and of the community of practice in ways that are useful and valuable to you. So enough from me by way of introduction. To move into the agenda then, and to get us started properly, we wanted to spend a little time celebrating what we've achieved in the last year and a half in what we've called the impact phase of the project, although impact has been written through the project from the very beginning. So I invite Ekin Akici from the Tomorrow Cities team in Istanbul to lead us on this before pushing on and reflecting on the what next questions. So over to you, Ekin.
Thank you, Max. Thanks, everyone. Hi, welcome. As Max already mentioned, I will reflect on the project's impact so far and what's next for Tomorrow Cities using the 3 drivers of impact model put forth by Taysa and other colleagues in their recent article that examines the impact in multiple dimensions and 3 main dimensions. The first one is voice, which considers who and whose perspectives and interests are involved in the future thinking and visioning. Max, can you? Yeah, thank you. So in terms of voice, we can say that community engagement, recognition of marginalized groups, open forums bringing communities and decision makers together, creative methods that facilitated future visioning by the communities, and enhanced risk perception have been achieved throughout the project in all the 10 cities. And the next is science that examines the application of data to provide guidance for more evidence-based normative approaches. Of course, multi-hazard science-backed risk modeling is one of the key elements of this project all around. and engagement of qualitative and quantitative data in risk prediction, together with the participatory planning trends being adopted and integrated into traditional decision-making mechanisms are other examples. And as for the action dimension, that brings about commitment to act on the future visioning outcomes to achieve a more transformative adaptation. We can name stakeholder involvement, institutional engagement, broad take-up levels across all around the municipalities and regions, and influencing master plans and strategy documents, peer learning, and increased capacity of local experts are also achieved. To give you some more specific examples from the cities, in terms of voice dimension, we can say that in Dar es Salaam, for instance, in the beginning, the decision-making authorities were not much closely engaged with the processes, but it has become an opportunity for the community groups and grassroots institutions to be more present and gave them more space to build their own visions without external influences. Likewise, in Kibera, in the future visioning workshops, it was only the communities and the grassroots institutions again, and they could create their own perspectives with their own interests. And flood mitigation works in Rapti and Nablus are some of the more tangible science aspects that have been achieved. And in terms of action, again in Dar es Salaam, in Ardu University, Ardu University is there to support the academic and research institutions to integrate tomorrow's cities approach into the undergraduate and postgraduate curricula for urban planning. And in Nairobi, on a different level, tomorrow's cities principles are embedded principles and methodologies are embedded into building climate resilience for the urban poor program. So you may have noticed that some of these examples are neither here nor there. So that's why I think it's also beneficial to talk about the intersections of these dimensions. And at the intersection of science and voice, we see a science-informed community awareness. I think one example for that is the focus group discussions in Istanbul that was mainly led by the social science team, but have always been accompanied by our engineer colleagues who informed the community groups about the science and technicalities of disasters and disaster risk. And also the exhibition was a good place to bring science and people together without the presence of authorities. And at the crossroads of voice and action, what we see is inclusive decision-making. Again, the Work Package 1 workshops especially can be an example to that, because this is a stage where in most of the cities, the local authorities were involved in the community discussions, but the hardcore science hadn't kicked in yet. Yeah, again, in another example in Mianzini. And as for science and action intersection, we have science-led governance, which is something more closer to the traditional urban planning practices, actually. We have so many examples of government stakeholders and local decision makers working closely engaged with the Tomorrow Cities science. But of course, can you move on? As we see here in all these crossings, there is something missing, because urban sorry because the future-oriented and disaster-resilient urban planning relies on all of these aspects altogether, and a combination of multiple elements to accommodate contextual needs and opportunities, and to create impact in real sense. So, can we move? Yes, thank you. And if we need to take a closer look at the city examples, we have Nablus and Istanbul as cases here. In Nablus, it is reported that in terms of voice, the adoption of more inclusive methods that include marginalized voices and a greater focus on equality, and Nablus municipality adopting the Tomorrow Cities approach that is more participatory and community-driven are achieved. And as for the science aspect, knowledge tools and data sets on disaster impacts have been created, and these are now available to local and national urban planning authorities. At the action level, in Nablus, Tomorrow Cities have introduced some innovative and cohesive approaches to strategic development and investment plan, which is a 4-year strategic plan that had been addressing the issues at hand in a more fragmented way, but Tomorrow Cities brought a more cohesive perspective for a more resilient and sustainable urban development. And at the end, these all add up to the impacts, which are, for Nablus case, TCDSC being successfully incorporated into the 4-year strategic development and investment plan, and also the existing 10-year development vision being extended in accordance with TCDSC that has been essential to address longer-term impacts of climate change and earthquake risk. And also, the Nablus municipality has expanded its approach by including more marginalized groups and integrating spatial planning into future development plans, and also focusing on fair distribution of disaster risks on community groups. So we are moving on to Istanbul. In Istanbul, at the voice level, we can say that a comprehensive qualitative research has been conducted for many months using focus group discussions, key informant interviews, and workshops among key marginalized groups. And during this process, land and housing issues, vulnerabilities, disaster risk perception, and social equality has been examined in the communities, as well as the social and political determinants of hazard vulnerability. And finally, at the exhibition period, the Tomorrow Cities Disaster Resilient Cities exhibition, Tomorrow's Disaster Resilient Cities exhibition has reached more than 30,000 visitors. And as for science, 50 earthquake scenarios were simulated, and the final modeling revealed significant variables and determinants in predicting the impact of a potential earthquake expected in Istanbul. And at the action dimension, we can say inclusion of local authorities into TCDSC process since the beginning, and outreach to other municipalities to expand and upscale TCDSC application, collaboration with national and international level actors, and during the exhibition period, bi-weekly panel discussions that hosted a variety of experts from different institutions have been achieved. So altogether, this made up the TCDSC framework, combining scientific projections with community-based planning methods, creating a big influence on municipalities' approach and perspective on the role of community in urban planning. And the research findings in Istanbul have been included in Büyükçekmece Municipality's 5-year strategic plan. Also, TCDSE as a methodology has been recommended in the Provincial Risk Reduction Plan in Istanbul. And finally, the further collaborations with Büyükçekmece and other municipalities on urban transformation planning are currently in progress. So to wrap up all these, I would like to go back to a more traditional model to address the impact question of impact. As I have tried to count some of them, we have a lot of outputs from all 10 cities all around the world. And some of the outcomes can be named under improved inclusion and equity, enhanced hazard and risk modeling, capacity strengthening, and increased risk awareness. And among the impacts that are more complex and that entail deeper changes in greater scope, we can count enhanced disaster risk management, influenced master plans, and urban planning. These are also common to all the countries we worked in, I guess. And these are still yet to be observed in a much longer period, of course. And that's why we hope the community of practice will be there to follow up with these developments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ekin, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perhaps we can maybe pause for any questions at this point or comments. I'm going to stop sharing and look in the chat. If colleagues have any questions on observations on our reflections and impact there, that would be great. If not, we can move on to the next part of the session. That's fine. I'll keep pushing on. That's good. So just to perhaps pick up on from this final slide, I think just as Ekin says, it's probably fair to characterize where we are in this figure around the outcomes part of the process. Clearly, we have many outputs and many changes have been made, impacts have been made in the short to medium change level. But perhaps we think about impact as something that happens in a longer time frame. And I think it's important, just like Ekin said there, to think about the community of practice as a mechanism, a strand of support to help with this ongoing process of trying to realize impact. And at a project level, we're continuing the monitoring and evaluation work going forward to try and capture and evidence these longer term impacts. And we're grateful to colleagues in the city teams for their help with that agreement to continue with that work. So moving things on then, all the city teams are engaged in various ways with activities to push the work forward, and I'm sure there's a lot to learn from the successes and challenges of that. And I'm pleased to invite Jeffrey from Nakuru City in Kenya and then Vivek from Rapti City in Nepal to share their work and reflections on Tomorrow City's implementation pathways. So perhaps, Jeffrey, you can start things off for us, and then we'll go straight into Vivek's presentation, if that's okay, Vivek. And then again, there'll be a pause for questions and reflections after these presentations. Over to you, Jeffrey.
Okay. Thank you. Hope you're getting me.
We hear you. Yep, we hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you so much, and I receive greetings from Kenya, Nakuru City. Today we are commemorating Independence Day in Kenya, so most of my colleagues are not able to join because most of them are outside the city, maybe back at the rural area or engage on other things. But allow me to proceed. So Nakuru City is a fourth city in Kenya that has a vision that envision Nakuru to be a model city that enhances quality of life and fosters economic prosperity. So that's the driving force for us in the city while we are doing things and, visioning and planning on the way forward. So to the next slide. Now, an overview of the city. City, as you can see from the middle of at the center of the country, because in Kenya, you'll find that much of the populations are concentrated on towards the center and towards the western part of Kenya. So at that region, you find Nakuru being at the middle. So it was founded in 1904 during the railway construction, got the municipality status in 1952, and 2021 we got the city status. And in that, we are the fourth city in Kenya and the third largest city in terms of population and geographical coverage. And again, the first under the new constitution, because we got the new constitution in 2010. So it's a very important milestone for us. So in terms of geographical coverage, it covers around 300 kilometers square with a population of over 500,000. So as I said that strategically, the city is almost at the center of the most populous part of the country. So it has served as a very important transit city and also a resort city because of two geographical resources in the city, one being the lake and another one being the volcanic mountain that is located within the city. So to the next slide. So you can see the beautiful photos of Nakuru. The first one, it is the administration, there's the city center, and you can see the building is a disaster office with the fire vehicles you can see there. Then the second one is the aerial view of the city. And I did this purposely because I wanted you to see that Nakuru city doesn't have skyscrapers. And Mark Belling can attest to that he was in the city and he didn't see skyscrapers in the city. And you will get to know why. Then the other one you see, Nakuru city is a UNESCO city and a folk arts, and that's our manager below there. Then I had said Nakuru city is a resort city. And in the last two photos, you see one on one side being the crater, which is as a result of volcanic activities, and the other one you see flamingos, which are the rich resources in the city. So that's the beautiful aspect of the city. However, you'll see from the following slides why the city doesn't have skyscrapers and why tomorrow cities came in handy to help us in solving that problem. So this slide, you see that person is stressed because of the many things that are beneath this beautiful city that you have seen the photos. So next. Allow me to take you through some historical perspective of disturbance or stressors to the city. So one is the faulting, which has been happening in the city. And that's the reason why you don't find skyscrapers in the city. Our ground is so weak. Whenever it rains, whenever there's earthquake, so there is always the high chances of faulting. Then the next is the Menengai forest. The northern part of the city has a forest, which again, during the drought, oftenly there are fires, which again poses a risk because there are some settlement around the forest. Again, the city is highly affected during political issues because it is, as I said, it is strategically located. And the population is made up of all the communities in Kenya. So whenever there is political issues, Nakuru city is usually affected. I've talked about the drought. Again, COVID-19 also affected us very much. There are earthquakes, there are cholera because of all infrastructure or facilities in the city. So in terms of wastewater management, the city has all the infrastructure so that whenever there is heavy rainfall, the clean water or fresh water is polluted by the wastewater, and the result is always the cholera. And you are seeing there was high record in 2015, 2017, and 2019. So security, and currently we are facing flooding. And you will see in the next slides how the flooding has really affected the city. And this is where the Tomorrow Cities team really came in handy during the workshop. And it was able to bring the conversation that it has really impacted on how we are doing the things and how we are relating with the communities in the city. So you can move to the next slide. So you can see from this image that I've shared, that's the spatial representation of the city. And the first image there is the fissures or the fault lines that occurred most recently. We were hoping Mark Belling will visit these places when he was in Nakuru, but we didn't manage because of time constraint. So this is the current scenario, and you can see there are some settlement or houses that were that demolished because of the issue. So some of the families here were displaced. The second photo is a fault line that occurred on a road section. And actually, I didn't get a picture. There was a vehicle that was almost, swallowed by the fault line during that time. And that image is the current image of the lake, this Lake Nakuru. And you can see from that direction that I have shown, that is exactly where I took that image. So already there are so many houses and settlements that have been submerged, and the situation is continuing. So from that image that I have shown here, you can see flood risk areas or floodplain areas is taking much of the city. So it is an issue that if not corrected now, the city is at risk of getting submerged into the lake in the future. So this is the major part that the Tomorrow Cities during our workshop we focus on. So next slide. So these slides now talks about how our experiences as far as Tomorrow Cities concept was implemented in the city. And our focus was risk-informed and participatory planning for resilient future cities. So this one was in line with our vision. This was in line with our strategies on resilient cities, and also in line with our structure plan. So it came at the right time when the situation was, at the apex or at the apex. So next slide. So during our workshop in Nakuru, we focused our discussion on these 4 groups, and it was chosen because of the reasons you are seeing on the other side. Like, for example, the faith-based organization in Kenya, the clergy community are very influential whenever an issue is there, or the government intends to push a narrative or a discussion. We find faith-based organization being easier for us because they influence or they have a huge following in the city. So number 2 is the residents. Most of them were business communities, and there are people who have been directly affected by the flooding or the lake rising water levels. The special needs group, also these are physically challenged people whom whenever there is an issue as far as flooding is concerned, they are highly affected. And lastly, were women. And this one, we put emphasis on gender-based needs and inspiration, and also to bring the issue of gender equity for future Nakuru. So from the images you are seeing, the first one was the special need group. And there is one gentleman there with a black top. His house is completely submerged in the lake. And the other one you are seeing, Mark Belling, he had joined us, and this was during the presentation. We really enjoyed that session. Next. So these are some of the work that was done. And as you can see from these 2 images, one was the drawings that were done by the special need group. And the focus was how to alleviate issues of flooding in the city. And from the stories that they shared, their vision was to create or to have a Nakuru city in future that is inclusive, safe, green, and operational by 2050. So the issue of safety came out in all the groups that were there because of the issues that are currently happening. And you will see in the next slide on how each group were sharing their visions and how they intend the city to look like in future. So the next slide. So this one is a summary of the discussions that came up. For the case of faith-based, they envision a city that is safe, that is inclusive and knowledgeable. The business community envision a city that is sustainable, that is safe, that is inclusive, vibrant, accessible, and has connectivity. The special needs also had the vision of safety, inclusivity, and sustainability. And lastly, women envision a city that is safe, inclusive, resilient, sustainable, and put strengthen the issues of governance. So from the four groups, you will realize that the issue of safety, the issue of resilience, and the issues of inclusivity came out loudly. So, and these were informed by the current situation in the city. So next. Now, these were some of the challenges that came out during the workshop. One was limited preparation and training time. So you will find that the workshop took place when Tomorrow City's, I'm told it was at the tail end. So we didn't have enough time to prepare and also to train some of our staffs, because you will find that majority of our staffs are not trained planners. Some of them are HR, some are clerical, some are trained in other fields. And, understanding the concept of planning needed more time to be trained and also be familiar with how to use some of the tools, because there were cards that you were using, like the visioning cards, the policy cards, which if they were given enough time, they could have been able to use them right way and be able to guide the groups. The second is the data sets, which is a huge gap in the city because we are lacking a high resolution and up-to-date topographical data, and also on issues of hazard. In terms of data, the city is, I'll say, weak in that area, and if given time, we'll see on how we are going to strengthen that part of the city. So next. Currently, these are some of the issues that the city is doing. One is policy making. During the discussion, this issue came out very well because already we have the Nakuru Vision 2050, which we need to move it into a concrete policy that will help the city envision or realize some of the aspirations that we got during the discussion. Number two is exploring land use discrepancies for informed risk reduction and prevention. This one, you need accurate and up-to-date understanding of land use, including trends in informality. So these are very, area that we are really focusing currently, and it came out during the Tomorrow Cities workshop, and we thought these are an area that we should explore and see how to address these issues. And lastly, is to have a comprehensive risk profile for Nakuru. For this one, we require robust data, we require complex analysis, and we require also to understand the impacts of climate change on the city's future development. So this one I call for collaboration as we move forward on how we can realize this one together as family and see Nakuru being a resilient city in future. Next. So these are some of the policies that are there. Now, the first one is the Integrated Strategic Urban Development Plan, which is a structure plan, and it is guiding development control in the city. All issues of, building application are guided by this policy document, and it is the document that is ensuring that then the city doesn't see development or some of the developers putting high-rise building because of the issues of weak ground. So it's a very important document that is guiding us in zoning regulations. Number two is an urban resilience strategy paper or plan or policy that was prepared for 2023 to 2033. So it's a very important strategy document that is helping the city in building resilience and also managing the risk. However, some of the key gaps that are there, number one is we don't have a disaster risk management policy, because in this case now you'll realize that we need to develop, implement, and enforce city-specific building codes. In this case now, we have national building codes, which envision or guides the development in the whole country. But Nakuru is so unique because of the issues of weak ground, issues of flooding, issues of the rising water lake. So if those those building codes are enforced like that, we are not going to really help the city in building the resilience. So this is an area that we are really working on currently. And it's a gap that we know if we are not going to fill this gap, we are not going to realize the vision of the city being resilient. And number two is having an in-depth study of the city's risk profile. This one, again, some of the data that we have, not that in-depth. So these are gaps that we feel that if it is filled or we get an in-depth study of the city's risk profile, we'll be able to have a clear strategy and a clear plan of how we are going to solve those problems. So next. So next step, or the currently what we are doing, number one is community of practice, which we are joining today officially. And we have been envisioning having regular meetings and informal and both formal webinars to discuss how the TCDSP framework is being adopted in our partner cities. So this one, we are going to really work together. And whenever there's an issue like that, we should be part of it. So kindly ensure that we are part of it. Number two is replication and scaling up. This citywide hazard profiling and mapping, again, ongoing. And we're also seeking partnership on the same. And then number three, capacity strengthening. And lastly, funding opportunities and future collaborations. So I think this is the last slide.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. As we'll hand over to you, Vivek, perhaps, if that's okay with your screen sharing. And thank you to Jeffrey and for all the work that's been done on the implementation pathways in Nakuru City. A question from me, Jeffrey. Those gaps you identified there, how significant are they? How to resolve those gaps? Is that like a 5-year project, or is it more significant or less in terms of funding and so on? How is it possible to address those gaps?
Okay, thank you, Hope, for that question. Yeah, these are the gaps that we identified after analyzing the documents and the plans and policies that we have. However, because of financial constraint that the government is going through currently, so it is not within the plan, but we are, we find that they are very key and very important areas that should be addressed, because as we are still, working on other issues, we are finding the lake continuing rising. We're also finding the flooding going on because currently we are experiencing climate change issues. So I can say these are the issues that we are taking that should be immediate. However, we are constrained in terms of funding.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thanks very much. I'll hand over to you, Vivek, now, please.
Thank you, Max. I will share my screen. Can you confirm that you can see the full screen? Thanks. Hello, everyone. And first of all, I would like to thank the community of practice for giving me this opportunity to speak a bit on the pathways to tomorrow's presentation. I would like to give a brief overview of, and for starting even that, I would like to discuss very briefly on how the conventional planning of our future cities usually take place and what Tomorrow's Cities, the program, tried to change. So I would like to start my presentation. So talking about the conventional way of city planning that is taking place right now, especially in the global south, we have these vast expanse of lands, these vast populations that have a good potential of growing, and these growing cities with natural resources and with their own set of properties, with their own cultures and everything. So in today's scenario, the usual trend on how the planning of these cities takes place is the governments usually sit down with consultants and experts, and they talk about very important issues like economy, jobs, infrastructure, health, and education, which is not a very bad thing. But there are some issues there are some very important burning issues that are usually missed out in the planning process. So among those is the consideration of the natural environment and the natural hazards and the disaster risk that is imposed in these cities. And the second thing is the considerations of the voices and aspirations of the marginalized and the poor, who are usually sidelined in the process, and there are very sad to say that a kind of a bystanders in those planning process. So these are the two key issues that the Tomorrow Cities project try to address. So with the Tomorrow Cities Decision Support Environment, this was our Nepal team that worked in Tomorrow's Rapti, of course, guided by the Tomorrow Cities international team. So again, coming back to one of the two key issues where the aspirations of the people who actually live in these cities is not considered in the usual planning process. What Tomorrow Cities did is it actually started with collecting the aspirations of the people of how they want to imagine their future cities to be. So this, of course, followed a series of increasing intensity of workshops where we collected individual aspirations and ended up with a co-mapped visions of communities, which were very carefully disaggregated to very carefully collect their aspirations. And then experts, urban planners facilitated the transformation of these aspirations into viable options. So the 6 plans that were produced by the community with their own hands was then digitized by the using the land use types that were prescribed by the communities, and not only the land use, they also detailed them with all the infrastructure properties, all the individual household and other infrastructure information in these maps. And then a different set of experts went on to conduct hazard, physical impact, and social impact assessments. And talking about hazard, we conducted hazard and consequent impact assessments of these 3 hazards in the Rapti city. That was earthquake, flood, and landslide. So just wanted to highlight this dedicated platform that was developed as part of the project, where Emin and team, who is also here, largely helped develop this platform, which was extremely useful in then communicating the impacts of these 3 hazards to the community. And we exhibited what the impact of these 3 hazards are in those 6 individual plans, and which ultimately helped us a lot in communicating in depth on what these hazards could impact in the cities that the people imagine themselves. So this visualization, this detailed visualization of impact really helped us to now conduct informed discussions on the policies and actions that would help mitigate the impacts of these disasters in those future cities. So collecting all of these feedback from the community, the disaggregated groups, and it is important to note that the community discussions also included the policy makers and the planners. So collecting all of their feedback after this informed discussion, we were then able to draft, working with the implementing authority, that is the Provincial Infrastructure Development Authority, to draft this final master plan of the capital city of the Lumbini province, which now reflected all the visions of the community and which incorporated the collected aspirations, which incorporated climate and disaster risk-informed decisions. And most importantly, it was prepared through an inclusive and a participatory process. And after the plan was developed, the project brought together all the local, provincial, and federal level stakeholders, including the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority, and the Chief Secretary of the Lumbini Province, and of course, the implementing authority in the Lumbini Province, and along with all the community members that participated in the process from the very start. So the plan was also, so there were major strides taken in the way of institutionalizing this plan in the city. So what next after this? So one of the key strengths of the program was the capacity strengthening program, where we were able to develop these dedicated modules to 4 of the main stages of what we did in Rapti. So this would be one of the key pillars of anything that we do in the future in Rapti city and also other cities that we may imagine. So with the experience of having conducted extensive trainings, including in Rapti, where we had more than 150 participants. So this is going to be one of those key things that is going to be instrumental in scaling or anything that we imagine that we may do in the periphery of the region as well. So talking about the opportunities and challenges, again, starting with the pool of professionals that have been trained through the program. So they will be replicate and adapt to any frameworks or any future endeavors we might imagine in the region. So that would be a great opportunity provided by this, by the project. And again, the strong community ownership of the process itself, not only the plan, but the process itself that was demonstrated in Rapti is one of our strong points as well. And the buy-in of the local governments and also the provincial governments in the process, and the fact that they realized how effective this method of including the opinions of the local communities from the very start, the realization that these government stakeholders had was also one of the very strong points. However, there exists some challenges as well, because of course there is always a challenge of continuing funding and expertise for this sustained capacity building initiatives, which is again the key pillar of any future initiatives. And it is also a challenge to integrate the dynamic socioeconomic data, which keeps changing over time, especially due to many factors like out-migration, for example. So it is always a challenge to incorporate those change scenarios in our planning. And another challenge is bridging any national level strategies with the local level, because the nation, the federal level planning might be, in some cases, extremely different than any local context. So it is always a challenge to bridge that gap as well. So talking about important lessons that we learned in our implementation at Rapti is participatory planning and inclusivity is at the heart of these processes, as we learned, because it is key in building the ownership of what we achieve at the end by the community. And iterative process are also key because we kept going back to the community at each stage. We tried our best to demystify our processes, demystify the results that we got. And again, the web app helped us a lot in doing that. So these iterative processes are also very important. And capacity building, as I've been saying, amplified the amount of impact that we could do at the city level. And again, the strong partnerships and synergy among these three tiers of government and taking them along was also very important in the success that we had at Rapti. And sustainability requires that there is a strong partnership between all the three tiers of government, the implementing authorities, and the community as well. And at the heart of this, it is very important to mention that community awareness and engaging the community in these activities are also extremely important because through these activities, they not only get to know what the government is doing, what the experts are doing, but it quite rightly ensures that they are attached to the entire process of planning. So these are some glimpses of the art competition that was organized among the students, or a dance competition with the theme of disaster resilient future that was organized. So these events are always very important. So the support that Rapti can have from the TC community of practice is sharing of knowledge. The more success stories that we hear from other cities, the more encouraged we are. The second is technical support. Of course, there is a huge opportunity to leverage the pool of expertise, the pool of world-class expertise and innovative tools that can locally adapt it. The third is the networking and advocacy. The Tomorrow Cities Community of Practice can leverage its weight to advocate to the national level governments and also the provincial level planning frameworks. And also we can leverage TC's global platform to attract funding and other partnership opportunities with the already good relations that we have made through the project in these years. And in focusing again on Rapti, the rapport that was built with the provincial government and also the national level authority during this project, we can leverage it to first integrate for policy integration. These the Lumbini province DRR strategy and local land use policies could be aligned with the national Nepal's national DRR strategic action plan with the many levels of dialogue and the many levels of talks that we have had, and the belief that of this framework, that the CDSC framework that has been that has inspired both the Lumbini province and the national level authority. So policy integration is another big step that we can do. And the next is scalability as well. With the success of what was achieved at Rapti, there are other cities nearby that may be the lowest hanging fruit, which have seen what happened in Rapti. For example, Lamahi and Gorahi, that are the nearby cities in the Lumbini province. So this is the Lumbini province, and this was the project area of Tomorrow's Cities, which included Rapti, Kadawa, and Sitaganga in the east. So there are these nearby cities which are rapidly urbanizing as well, the Lamahi city and the Gorahi and even Tulsipur, that could learn from what happened in their nearby municipalities and replicate. And what we built through this project, the report that was built, could very well enable that happening in the two cities as well as a start. So with this, I conclude the presentation. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Back to you, Max.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you. Can you stop sharing and I'll come back in? Lovely, thank you. We're still on schedule for a 2:30 finish, which is good. Thank you, everyone. Any questions at this stage before we move into the community of practice details. I think both presentations, thank you, Jeffrey, and thank you, Vivek, really give good insight into just how hard it is to, and the challenges and opportunities around implementation and moving the work forward. And it gives real insight into that process and the significant amount of work that has already happened to get to where we are, and the necessity to keep pushing with that work in order to keep things moving forward. So thank you for both, and also very helpful to have the reflections on how the community of practice might support that process. Right, I'll come back in there. So thank you both, and very much indeed. And I think, yes, this is exactly the context that, from my perspective, I think that where the community of practice sits as one strand of support to help colleagues in city teams and beyond continue the work and enlarge and grow and adapt the work going forward. So let's focus in on the nuts and bolts of the community of practice as we've designed it, if you like. And obviously this is an ongoing process, and feedback is essential, and the community of practice only works if it works for everyone. So we're very keen on your feedback in terms of how we've set things up and how we'll develop things as we move forward. So we have a community of practice page on the Tomorrow City's website. Tomorrow City is now hosted by NSET. The website is now hosted by NSET, and on that community of practice page, you'll find the aims and missions of the community of practice. And forgive me for stressing again, it's very important to click on that button and enroll in the community of practice to become a member, because quite soon the more general Tomorrow City's mailing list will cease, and from then on we'll be using the new mailing list, which comes from enrollment on the Tomorrow City's community of practice. So we'd really like you to do that in order to keep in touch with developments and participate in the process. I wanted to flag up a number of aspects of how the community of practice will work. We have our mission, we have our membership. So starting today, we have existing Tomorrow City's colleagues from the wider project, and then we're looking to expand and grow the network as ideas and things develop, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a while. We're imagining a steering group, or we have a steering group, and we have an online application process for that, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. And we'll use the website as a forum for news and communications around opportunities, additional training resources, publications that we're all working on. There'll be a newsletter and social media presence. And in essence, we're imagining 4 meetings a year, and these will be theme meetings reflecting the diversity of the Tomorrow City's community of practice membership. And in addition to, on this slide here, just flagging up some of the other aspects of the Tomorrow City's work as we go along. And I'm delighted that colleagues from Kenya and Quito have joined us today, so thank you. In terms of the governance of the process, like I said at the beginning, it's a rotational chair, and I'm very pleased to be the interim chair as we begin the process. But ideally, we're looking for the chair to come forward from the wider membership, and we'd be delighted if colleagues working in city teams and other areas wanted to think about taking on that role and shape the community of practice in directions that they see fit. Membership is fully inclusive, and we commit to balanced representation across membership. In terms of the steering committee, there is an online form, and we encourage you to fill in that form if you wish to be involved in the steering committee process. And we've come up with our list of roles there, and these are just suggestions, and there's a space there for other roles, and we would encourage you to suggest other ways in which you might want to be involved. And the steering committee is really the guiding mechanism for the community of practice, but it's also the group from which we'll be drawing people in order to progress the planning of sessions and communications and working through the activities that we'll do next and so on. So a really lively and active role, I hope. So please, if you're interested in that, if you want to get involved, please fill in the online application form on the web page. And like I said, we appreciate all feedback on the governance and other arrangements for the community of practice, and we will take that on board and act upon it. Okay, so I mentioned earlier the community of practice is one strand of support to support this ongoing implementation work, pushing the Tomorrow Cities related work forward. But we've been working on other things too, and perhaps I can hand over to you, Mark, for comments on these other aspects.
Yes, thanks, Max. I'll spend a couple of minutes highlighting these activities. There are lots there on the screen that you may be familiar with some of them. Really, this is a response to a couple of pressures. One is simply the volume of work and energy that's come from the network, and trying to think of different ways in which we can communicate that work, both to the academic, but also practitioner and wider policy audience. And also a recognition that the topic we're working on, urban resilience, is perhaps uniquely challenged because every city, every urban area is unique, is different. It faces its own specific hazard profile, has its own social geography and policy environment and economic drivers, so that we are wanting to celebrate and recognize the uniqueness of every urban location, but also, of course, provide some more generic support and support that could be rolled out through multiple actors across cities, just as Vivek was saying, across the region surrounding Rapti. So some of these partnerships are there for that reason. So we can provide the learning that we've generated together through Tomorrow Cities from all of the 10 cities and the science team, and promote that through the architecture of already global partners. So just to flag some of the opportunities, and they are indeed that. These are all things that you can join, and we will be sharing updates across all of these lines of work, and a couple of them we may even say a few more words about today. But the first is a special edition of the journal Environment and Urbanization. So you may know it's one of the world's leading academic journals at this intersection of the environment and urbanization, particularly focusing on global south or majority world cities, but going beyond that as well. And yeah, we're delighted to have been invited to edit a special edition, and that's quite fresh news. We've put an announcement on the Tomorrow Cities website just this week, and we are open for proposals for papers up until June if you want feedback, or until the end of July next year for formal presentation of drafts, and then there'll be a 12-month process of review and revision. And we're very happy to work with junior academics or indeed policymakers, even those who are non-traditional in terms of writing. We've managed to negotiate that this journal will, for our special edition, not just have academic pieces, but that, for example, include photojournalism or drawing-based journalism, as long as there's an analytical story you want to tell. And for policymakers, very specific commentaries, perhaps 1,000 words or so, reflecting on some aspect of urban risk and resilience. So that's exciting. The risk can is noted here, and we're in discussion with the risk can, which is a already existing global science network. It's associated with the International Science community, Future Earth, and so is a great way of connecting what we do to that sister network, if you like. We've got some very close conversations with UN Habitat, particularly around their new mandate, which is to integrate disaster risk reduction across all their portfolio of activities. And there's particularly through the collaboration with colleagues from Nakuru, opportunities to learn from that and integrate some of the Tomorrow Cities methodologies into the urban planning toolkit of UN Habitat, which is then, of course, made available to cities worldwide. Got another close relationship with the global earthquake model that has an ambition to extend beyond earthquake risk, perhaps into some other hazards, climate-related hazards, and to pick up some of the technical impact-based and participatory methodologies that we've developed. So that's particularly exciting. And then finally, and I think there's colleagues from UCLG, Juan Carlos, who's here and may talk to this a little later. We have a massive online open learning course, which is a way, really a very accessible way of anyone to pick up the key learnings of the Tomorrow Cities approach. Yes, it's the methodology is behind it, but it's a little bit more than that. I think it's kind of promoting that inclusive, risk-sensitive, future-oriented planning to as wide a community as possible. And all these things, of course, will be connected up through the website, and we hope to develop them in conversation with the community of practice. Thanks, Max. Back to you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Yes, please let us know what you think and suggest other things. And it's exactly the sorts of activities I think that will help us keep the community of practice a lively and worthwhile and interesting thing to be part of. Mark mentioned the MOOC, the massive open online course, which has been developed partnership with UCLG, and I'm pleased to invite Juan Carlos to lead us through this. Are you there, Juan Carlos?
Yes. Thank you very much, Max. And yeah, I'm going to go very, very briefly through this because I know we're kind of running a little bit late. And as Mark mentioned, so this United Cities and Local Governments is very happy to have be hosting and have help in the development of this online course, introducing the Tomorrow Cities approach, not kind of an interactive way, not going as much in depth into the science behind it, but more introducing the approach so that cities can integrate the participatory, future-oriented methodology that it's looking at. And this is hosted together with other online courses that UCLG has been developed with different partners around sustainable development goals, planning, local finances, accessibility, and resilience issues. So it's a platform that already has more than 5,000 practitioners, local governments, students, through these different courses. I think there's 18 at the moment, most of them in English, Spanish, and French. And this is the new addition to this platform. We can go to the next slides. So yeah, we did the launch last week, and we already have 300 participants enrolled in the course, mostly in the English version, and we will be launching the Spanish and French version next week before going into the holidays. So we hope it kind of also can bring more participants that after learning from the approach want to kind of engage with people from the Tomorrow Cities Consortium that are continuing this community and these exchanges. And let's go just quickly through the slides. So it's has some different interactive elements, building on the cases from some of the 10 cities that have worked with the Tomorrow Cities Consortium, showing how those future visions that are hand-drawn are transformed into digital maps. Some of the general theory behind the hazard and impact modeling, and most of this is based on the work that the Ramesh team has been doing in terms of the more in-depth workshops, guiding books, and everything presented in a more interactive way. So we hope it's useful for those of you who want to get more people into the Tomorrow Cities spirit in our approach as a first base for them to touch. The videos that we filmed with quite a few of the members that I see in this call are also really nice to introduce this, and we got help from Sergio as well, from the communications team at Tomorrow Cities, to kind of really be very simple but very engaging in the way that we introduce Tomorrow Cities to this new audience. So please use it as a tool to invite people to join this community of practice and learn more about what you are all doing. Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. It looks great, and really interesting to see how reworked and communicated the process for this larger and diverse and global audience in a really interactive and interesting way. And am I right that we can all join? Can we all join? We just enroll and off we go?
Yes, I can put I can put the link in the chat. And even if you go to the English version, at the end of it, you will see the link to the Spanish and French versions that will be ready next week. But it's already, you can already enroll for the Spanish or French version if you prefer. So I'll put that in the link now.
Thank you. And I know that discussions are ongoing about how to perhaps combine or at least communicate membership lists with each other. And that would be a really good way of, you know, a mutually beneficial enlargement of the networks and ideas and so on. Thank you. Okay, so we're heading towards the end of the session now. Thank you all for contributions. Now, one thing we've stressed from the start is it's really important for the community of practice to be a success, that people have a chance to participate and have the community of practice direction and shape reflect what's important for them. So we thought we'd finish, and Tysa's very kindly agreed to lead this section with a more interactive element that will give us some input into what people are looking for with the community of practice and how we might incorporate that into our planning and delivery. So over to you, Tysa.
Thank you, Max. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to see everyone here. I know that some people already had to drop out from the chat, but hopefully some people are still seeing us later via YouTube. But in any case, as Max said, it's really important to us to collect inputs from you and also make the community of practice something that works for you and with you. And that is a very co-produced process. So what we're going to do now, and it's going to be very quick, hopefully, but we can have some quick discussion. We can have also follow-up discussions on that, is to really see your views on what's more important, because our time and our capacity is limited. So we need to see what should we be doing next. So those of you that are still in the meeting, I ask that you bear with me for 5 to 10 minutes, because now you're going to vote on the activities that should be a priority for the community of practice, and your input is really, really valuable, because this is not just an interactive activity for a meeting. We really plan to take this input forward. So I'm going to start by explaining what the 3 questions consist of very quickly. The first will be a word cloud, where you will have some opportunity to brainstorm on what the community of practice can do for you in a more free-flowing kind of way. Then we have a structured set of options. And I realized that, Max, maybe if I explain it now, I might bias people a little bit. So shall we just start with the word cloud and then we move on to the explanation of the categories? I'm going to share my screen.
We can't listen to you, Tysa.
Oh, I got muted, sorry. So this is the famous Mentimeter. I think at this point, most people should be familiar with it. You can use it using your phone, or you can just type the website in your computer and the code. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. It's really important that everyone provides inputs, people organizing this meeting, people attending the meeting. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just to get in the Menti, and then as soon as you get in, if you can just click on the little thumbs up so I know how many people are there at the moment. I'm going to start here. Okay, 10 thumbs up. I guess we have 25 or so people in the meeting. So when we get to 20, I think we can get going.
You just copy the code on the chat so it's faster for us. Thanks.
Yeah, great idea. Can someone do that for me? Because I'm sharing my screen. I cannot do it.
Thanks, Vivek.
Okay, we can continue as people are logging in because the next slide, well, doesn't have the QR code. So I'm going to wait a little bit more. Is anyone having an issue accessing Mentimeter? Please let us know. Well, since the link is in the chat and the code, I'm just going to get started because I'm conscious of the time. So the first question, as I said, is a word cloud, and this is just for you to provide some words, some keywords that relate to what can the community of practice do for you. So which ideas come to mind when you think of activities and things that we could work on together. So if you can start just adding some inputs and options, that would be great. Okay, knowledge sharing, capacity strengthening. If you remember, in some of the last Tomorrow Cities meetings, when we were still a project, we have a similar activity, but now it's going to get more structured as we go. But it's good to see some things showing up again, especially capacity strengthening, networking, peer learning. I think these are things that people have seen happening Tomorrow Cities, and they want to keep seeing that happening. So that's great. Only 10 people voted. I asked that people are also organizing the meeting. Everyone here, feel free to just give inputs. And this doesn't have to be from a personal perspective yet, just in general, things that you would like to see popping up in the community of practice. We're going to ask about personal commitment in the last question, so to get a sense of what your availability is. Okay, so publishing, networking, and again, the more you repeat words that have been used, the more we know what the priority is. Okay, we have a reasonable word cloud now with networking, learning, new projects, publishing, capacity building, lots of options popping up. Fundraising, okay, some talk of finance, online learning. I guess there's some saturation now, and hopefully we have covered most of these options in our next question. So what we have done now is we have listed potential activities that the community of practice can do. And as I said, hopefully they will respond to what you were thinking about, but there is an option by the end, which is other activities, where you can maybe drop in the chat if this list contains something that we haven't covered yet. So I'm just going to go through the list very quickly, just to make sure that we are on the same page regarding the understanding of what these activities mean. So the first one is practice-oriented peer learning events. So this is an opportunity for cities or different groups to learn from each other's experience. So we have very recently, for example, the Dar es Salaam team visiting Kathmandu to talk about, connecting with different authorities and how can you engage the national government for better decision-making at the local level. So I see that you are already engaging, which is great. The second option is writing and publishing groups. So if you're interested in publishing papers about the work that we did in Tomorrow Cities, or, you know, doing any kind of writing, really, we can have support groups for that. We can have support groups for funding applications. We can have problem or emergency driven actions. And what that means is, you know, if we have some specific activity or event, it could be, you know, a natural hazard that has hit the city or has hit the country in a specific way, we do have capacity, you know, across the community of practice, and maybe we can work together to solve problems. We also have additional capacity strengthening activities. So maybe we can have, you know, ways to teach each other new things that we are learning as we go through our careers and pathways and trajectories in the cities. We can have activities to attract new cities, so to increase the size of our community of practice. We can have additional data collection on impact to really follow up on the impact work that we are doing, to know more about what we are succeeding with. And as I said, we also have other activities. And I think it's important, of course, it's not going to be top in the ranking because we don't have a similar understanding of what that means, but it's good to acknowledge this there because there might be something that we haven't covered. So the objective here is to have a sense of priority, again, because we cannot invest in each and every one of these activities. So it's important for us to know what do we actually prioritize. And I can see that peer learning events is at the top of the list at the moment, as well as support with funding applications. If anyone is having an issue with the ranking, just let me know and we can support you in that. Of course, all of these are important, and you know, some things they become important as we go through the engagement with the community of practice, but it's good to have a sense of, you know, how do we start with and what do we prioritize in the first instance. So I think we have two at least key priorities: support with funding applications, practice-oriented peer learning, and then after that, problem or emergency-driven actions. It keeps changing. Capacity strengthening. Okay. I'm conscious of the time, so I have to move on. But we're going to keep this in our records, and we are going to, you know, maybe have some follow-up discussions to see how can we work using this ranking as a basis. The last question, it's a temperature check if you want. So this is a more personal input that you're going to provide, because we know that these things are important, but then in practice, when you assemble these groups, people don't have time to engage with it, or they just, you know, they cannot find the capacity to contribute. So this is from a more personal point of view, which of these activities you would be personally able to support. So on the left-hand side, you will mark if you can support that activity at all, whether because you don't care so much about it or because you don't have time for it. On the right-hand side, you have, you know, I'm so committed, I'm so interested, I have time for it, so I could even lead this activity because I'm very interested in it. And in the middle, you can always slide towards the middle. It means that, you know, I could participate, but I'm not sure if I would want to lead or have a very prominent presence in those groups. So this is to have a sense of, you know, which groups we're actually expecting people to show up and to, you know, contribute more often. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just to kind of think a little bit about it, because it's, again, it's a personal reflection about your time against your personal interests. So it's important that you reflect on that and provide something that is realistic, because we're going to use that moving forward. Okay, I think there is lots of excitement. We don't have any activity where people say that they cannot support it. People are mostly interested. The capacity to lead seems to be a bit compromised because people probably have so many other things to do. And we do have a small sample today, so of course that it will change if we ask a wider group, but at least we have a sense of what the group here is interested in contributing to. So if you remember, we were at the top of the list. There were peer learning, if I remember correctly, writing and publishing groups, and also capacity strengthening. But in general, most people are here in the middle, so happy to contribute, but not necessarily happy to lead those activities. There might be exceptions, of course. Some people have put their inputs here for example, additional data collection impact. One person manifested interested in leading. I think most people are actually interested in participating, but not necessarily leading those activities, which is important information for us. Okay, should I stop here, Max, or should we give people some more time? What do you think?
Firstly, it's a terrific exercise. Thanks very much for doing it. Really helpful to see and get people's direct feedback like that. I think probably we should move to the final slide now, and conscious of the time as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Taisa. So let me just get back to where we were, and then so
yeah, you can skip all of that.
I'll just do it that way. Lovely. Thank you, Taisa. So that was great. And we'll take all those suggestions on board, just like Taisa said, as we plan future sessions. And we just wanted to sort of finish with this final slide to flag up our thoughts as we sit here in December for our next meeting, which will be around about mid-March next year, 2025. So for our TC CoP 2 meeting. And one thought we had, as we I'm sure know, as we speak, the IPCC are engaged in the very important work of writing a special report on climate change and cities. And one idea we had was that perhaps we could use our next community of practice meeting as a space in which to invite the IPCC and perhaps also someone from GEM that Mark mentioned earlier, the open platform for modelling and risk assessment work, which Tomorrow's Cities colleagues have some strong connections with now. And we thought we might have a conversation around perhaps introducing some of the risk modelling work that we've done and also the multi-hazard work that's been done in Tomorrow's Cities into this conversation with the IPCC, and perhaps to have our voice, the Tomorrow's Cities voice, inform that process, perhaps move the conversation from climate change towards other forms of hazard, how those can be conceptualized and dealt with and so on. So that was one of our ideas about how we might use the next session, and it perhaps gives a sense of the ambition, really, I think, to make this a really interesting and worthwhile meeting place, to do all the things that we just suggested in the previous slide in the Mentimeter, and also to try and invite in audiences and groups that we can have these discussions with and perhaps shift and influence the conversation. We'll also give updates on the special edition. We'll confirm steering group membership, so please fill in the online form for that if you want to be involved in that sort of capacity. And importantly too, in the meantime, as we work our way towards March, if you have any feedback on how we did today, what you'd like to see in the sessions, how you want to be included and participate, then please email us on the Tomorrow's Cities Community of Practice email address. So I think that's where we are. I'm going to invite Mark back in now just to perhaps round things off for us. And then we're going to take a photograph of us all on the through the screen save. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Max and Taisa. Thanks, all colleagues, and for those that have been listening all the way through as well. We promise the next meeting will be more interactive, I think, and so I don't think I need to say more than that. Yeah, just a huge thanks from me, and look forward to the conversation continuing.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. So if everyone can bear with us while we just take our final screenshot. That's okay. I'll go 1, 2, 3, and then a big smile. 1, 2, 3, smile.
Max, can you give
Yes.
give it a second more
Okay.
while I change the you to a grid view, because right now your screen is appearing the largest in on my end. I don't know.
No, we don't want that.
I don't know how it's on your end.
You do it, Vivek.
Yeah, I'm trying to fix
Please.
it.
So you should have a view with some squares on the top of your screen of the Zoom. Usually there you can change the view.
Okay, now it's good. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks all. Thanks to everyone who contributed, and thanks everyone else for joining us. And been really great.
You.
Thanks so
Bye.
much.
Yeah, bye bye.
Bye, everyone. Good to see you again.